Okay, we're back. So just going to go over a quick rundown of a broken down transaxle. This is an IRS. And once you get it broken apart in the two, your main shaft, pinion shaft, your gears, everything, you kind of want to inspect everything. We're obviously going to change out synchros, but you want to check your hubs, look for any damage on any of your gears, make sure that there's not any broken pieces. Just before you go any further. Then you're going to do a few steps before we start reassembling, changing the synchros out. One of which is cutting off the teeth on the cone. So apparently when they are made, they index on three sections of teeth in groups of three, 9 total. And you need to remove those so that you start a new sequence. Otherwise, they'll run on the end of these cones until you put the car away into the junkyard. So the way that this works is if you have your cone, you have a synchro. Basically what that does is the cone is tight to the gear and then the synchro. And this is all just kind of like a braking mechanism so that when the hub is on there, this slider goes down to make the next gear change. I've got to kind of find the home for it here. And what it does is it's spinning, it's under load, you put the clutch in, and then you want to get that next gear. It kind of helps everything slow down and then mate itself into the cone. So eventually it'll grab onto that cone, which is mated to the gear, and slow everything down. In this case, we need to remove these sections of 3, and I've already done one here and removed it, so it starts a new sequence of teeth that it's going to grab. And you've got to do them on 4th, 3rd, and 1 and 2. 1 and 2 are slightly different because for whatever reason they want to be 180 from each other. I've found in most cases they're in groups of 5, but from what I've been told is just take 3 off. So I take the inner 3, leave the other 2 that are kind of worn, and then it'll start finding a new pathway of what it's going to grab. If you look, and it's kind of tricky, I've got these marked with Sharpie on the top if you look, but if you kind of hold it at the right light, you can see where it shows wear. And if you look at that furthest most tooth, there's wear, where the next one, it's still kind of a crisp angle on the very edge. So those are kind of the indicators of what teeth are being used and worn on a regular basis. Some people will sandblast them, and that'll make it a more pronounced shine, so you can kind of find them. But there's more work involved bringing them back, because we're going to polish all of this after we weld these up and break all these teeth off. So after we break off the teeth like I did here, you're going to press the cone back on. We're going to weld, and when they say a welded 3rd and 4th, we're actually welding the cone to the gear itself. Some of the bus trannies or like this, they're all one. So that is a positive mated surface, so there's no slip. In this case, this is just a press fit, and over time, if you lean into this tranny, you can get this to spin, and then obviously you're not getting a good tight gear exchange, and it's not meshing. So to get to this point, these have to be pressed on and off. You use a press. I'll show you that if necessary. But once you press them apart, do that, cut them off, clean them good, press them back on. We're going to weld them. Then you need to surface it so it's back to the total meshed or flat profile. So you don't want it proud, the weld's proud on the surface. And then we need to go through and polish the edges and then hone the center, because when you do weld these, that ID can shrink slightly. So you need to make sure that it's a good, nice running freely on the bearings inside the shaft. So quick little video there. Also on the hubs, we like to drill those to get some more oiling. And then we'll also put some more oiling grooves in here just to kind of increase any oil flow we can to the bearings to not burn them up. But that's just a quick primer on that, and we'll do some more as we go through the process. I'll show you the welded cones and polishing and honing and all that stuff. Okay, so What I do to cut these cones off is I kind of set myself up a little station, and I've got my tools here. I like to save the little cut-off wheels that get too small to do anything really, most of the time. But they're really good for cutting off the gears because you got to kind of get in there tight. I'm sure there's better grinders for this, but this just seems to be what works for me. So we've got our teeth marked with a Sharpie. We come in here. I lay this down on my lap so that I just have something that I can grind up against. And I just get myself started. I find my teeth. I mark with the Sharpie, and I just cut that tooth off. Start with one side, flip it over, and you're just kind of making a V cut on it. Now the trick is you don't want to get into the other teeth that are still good, because that could be the new sequence of teeth that you're going to find. So I cut that one off. I've already done 3 here that are cut. You look up close. So the next step is what I'll do is I'll switch my tools out, and I'll go to just a little mushroom grinder, and I'll just kind of follow that. There's already a little bit of a V-notch from the way that these things are machined. So I just kind of work it in like that, and I just... So I'm gonna just do little half-moon sweeps and get that all cleaned up. Once I get that step, then I switch to my third one, which is just a little porting grinder, and I sit and just kind of put a nice little chamfer on it. And smooth it out. So 3 steps to do those. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but when you're done, you have a nice cut off section. And so you're going to have 3 sections of 3, 9 teeth total you cut, and then you're creating new ones. So a lot of hours that go into doing these. So when you go and you buy a transmission that's been built by a pro and they're expensive, it's for a reason, because there can be a friend of mine who does it for a living, 40, 50 hours into one transmission to do all these tricks to make those things live. So don't haggle at the price. Pay them what they ask. Okay, so where we're at now is we're going to weld the cones onto our gears for 3rd and 4th. We've got the teeth cut off of the cones. They're all ready to go. They're nice and clean, so solvent tank and then brake clean. We're going to have to press them back on before we weld them. But I like to get all the oil or anything that could be inside these, because they've been sitting in gear oil for a long time. They kind of start to impregnate into the steel, so a little bit of cook-off kind of helps with the welding process down the road. Before I heat anything up or I weld them especially, I kind of like to get a ballpark on where I'm at for size for the inner diameter. So I just take an inside mic and I check them, see if they're the same. They are. They should be 38 millimeters, but we want to just double check. So we got the mic, double check it, right at 37.99. So right on the money for 38. That's kind of where we need to be. And this is kind of a feel thing, so there is a little bit of a margin of an error. But we just want to make sure that before we start distorting things that we have an idea where we started, so we can take it back. Yeah, 38 on the nut. So just make sure you're kind of figuring out before you start screwing around where your starting point is. Next thing I do is this heater. I just to heat them up, I just have an old toaster oven. I stick them in there like we're making a pizza bagel, and I just crank it up to about 300, 250, and I just let it cook itself off, and that'll just kind of help get any oil or any crap off of it before we weld it. You don't want to go crazy. You don't want to get them red hot. You just want to cook any oil off of them. It stinks like hell. You might have to open this just slightly to let the fumes out, but it really helps with the welding, keeping it clean. And I do 15-20 minutes on that. Okay, so We're back. We're going to weld our gears now. So I've cooked off all the oil the best I can. Now I've pressed the cone back on with the washer. We used the press. I've put a couple reference marks here because this is where I'm going to add 2 more oiling grooves like this to kind of increase oil flow to the bearings. And it also just gives you an idea where not to weld because I don't want to be cutting back through my weld. So I'll throw some small little beads in there that'll weld up the gear set. And then we'll surface it. Not too bad in there, a little bit of junk, but so you just throw your weld on there and then we'll go ahead and surface it flat, take it back to original height. Okay, so we've welded the cones after we pressed them on. I've gone through and just polished them up, cleaned them up. Then we just put a little light hone on the inside just to make sure that everything is correct and it's not tight. Slide it over, so we take third, slide it over. We want to make sure the bearing doesn't bind, and then it's nice and smooth and it spins, okay? So this bearing's dirty, it needs to be cleaned and re-greased before we put it back together, but it gives you the general idea that that's not tight, so we're in good shape.